How tall was Goliath? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Samuel on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 1 to 11. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Samuel chapter 17, beginning at verse 1. Now the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle, and were gathered at Socoh, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Socoh and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels, and a shield-bearer went before him. Then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel, and said to them, "Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourself, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Coming to chapter 17, after a short break in our chronology, we return to the narrative as it would have happened sequentially. David has been anointed king, but he hasn't taken the position yet, for Saul is still alive and still king, even though the Lord rejected him. But because the Lord has rejected him, that meant that the battles Saul fought weren't necessarily easy to win, if they won them at all, and Saul's disposition as a fearless warrior wasn't always present either. Such is the case here with the story of Goliath. During Saul's reign, and really throughout this period of Israel's history, the Philistines had been a thorn in their side. They were allowed to live on the west coast of Israel in what should have been Judah's territory. And so, from time to time, the Philistines would come and conquer parts of Israel, while at other times Israel would drive the Philistines back to their territory and be able to live autonomously. In chapter 17, we have one of those times where the Philistines decide to come to battle with Israel. Assuming our chronology is correct, and David is between 17 and 19 here, then we're talking about 1022-1021 BC, or about 3 to 4 years after the events of chapter 15. The setting is southwestern Judah on the border between Judah and the Philistines. Socoh and Azekah, as seen on the screen now, are due east of Gath for the Philistines, and even though our map doesn't show it, is due west of Bethlehem for Judah, though Bethlehem would be a little bit of a trek as there are mountainous regions in between. Knowing the location of Bethlehem is important to understand why David came to the battlefield in the first place. As you can see from the pictures, the region is hilly. However, the Elah Valley separates the two sections of land surrounding Azekah and Socoh. The Philistines were gathered on the northern side of the Elah Valley in Ephes-dammim, not too far from Azekah, while Saul's army was gathered on the south side of the Elah Valley near Socoh. In fact, Saul and some of his men encamped in the Elah Valley close to Socoh, with much of the valley being between them and the Philistines. Among the Philistine army was their champion, their major warrior named Goliath. Goliath wasn't just any man. He was a giant. Now the scriptures give his height as 6 cubits and a span, which makes it difficult for us to know exactly how tall Goliath was, because we measure in meters or feet today, and a cubit could have different measures in relation to these, depending on the time period. In our earlier studies of the Old Testament, we said that a cubit is about 46 centimeters or 18 inches. A span is usually thought of as half a cubit, which would be about 23 centimeters of 9 inches. Thus, if we do the math, Goliath was about 2.97 meters tall, or about 9 foot 9. Now, of course, the numbers given here could be rounded off, or the cubit might have been a different length, making Goliath a little shorter or even a little bit taller. But regardless, Goliath was a tall man. Now, some take a look at this story and see the height of Goliath and say that this can't possibly be true, for nobody stands that tall today. And while it is true that as of this taping, nobody stands 9 foot 9, the tallest man does stand 8 foot 3. But that's just today. For the tallest man outside the Bible history to ever be recorded stood 8 foot 11, or almost 9 feet. And that's just confirmed. So before we discount the Bible story here as mythological, let's realize that humans have been recorded to obtain a height of almost 9 feet before, and so it's entirely possible that some have actually been taller, and that we just haven't recorded it. That there were giants in Israel at that time also shouldn't surprise us, for back in Israel's conquest of Canaan, which occurred about 400 years before, Joshua 11 verse 22 said, "None of the Anakim were left in the land of the children of Israel. They remained only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod." Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod were all Philistine cities, so Goliath being a giant just confirms the history of Joshua 11. As for Goliath's armor, it weighed about 5,000 shekels of bronze, which, depending on how much the shekel of bronze weighed at that time, could have been around 57 kilograms or 125 pounds. Since the man was over 9 feet tall, with a weight to support that, such a weight of armor is not out of the realm of possibility, even if it was heavy and cumbersome. Goliath's spear is said to have weighed about 600 shekels, meaning a weight of about 7 kilograms or 15 pounds. Needless to say, if Goliath's height didn't terrify you enough, his armor and weapons would. But with such a physical presence also can lead to arrogance, as is evident here, for Goliath didn't want to fight the entire army of Israel. He wanted to fight only one man. If Israel's man defeated Goliath, the Philistines would become Israel's servants. However, if Goliath defeated Israel's man, then Israel would become the Philistines' servants. What was Israel to do? For they were greatly afraid. We'll find that out, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 12 to 27, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.